Story 1. Too much to include in one post, but you can definitely believe I am putting as much money as possible into Nvidia and Tesla once I get a job. Also, I am definitely moving out for college. I do not care if I have to take out loans. That said, I would immediately mourn my daughter, because there is basically no chance I will ever get her back. Story 2. Spend 16 years rehearsing how I am going to integrate myself into my wife's life just so I do not mess it up. I just hope the children turn out the same. I guess I just like my life. Laugh out loud. Story 3. Be kinder and worry less. I would still study hard, go to college, and save money. I would write down the stories of the elderly people in my family. Story 4. Take my academics seriously. Get into a good college instead of not caring. Avoid spending time with the wrong people just because they are popular. Start treating my family more kindly. I was so mean. Story 5. I'm finding my husband much earlier. We met when I was 21, which would allow us to avoid significant heartache. Also, Bitcoin, lots of Bitcoin. I would also avoid the injury that made me permanently disabled at 18 years old. Story 6. Wait until my grandfather dies in 2006 when I am 19 and spend the £5,000. He leaves me on Bitcoin and retire at 25. Story 7. I would not have to waste my time talking to the wrong people and could have made all of the good decisions I have made sooner. I will also be more assertive and invest the $20,000 I have. Story 8. Get diagnosed and have my bipolar disorder treated. Things would have been very different if I had been properly managed from an early age. Story 9. I am currently 45. It would be a mix of excitement and sadness. Trying to relive my life but better would be a fool's errand. It would drive a person crazy. So I would go in a completely different direction. 1. Either try to convince my parents that I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or take care of it myself as soon as I turned 18. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 29. Lots of opportunities for improvement there. 2. Assuming I could do that and just knowing it in general, I would aim higher. I went to state school a little over an hour away from home. I think if I had the opportunity, I could have success in better schools. Maybe I'm delusional, but I think I could at least get in at one of the prominent technology-focused schools, especially since I know which things are going to pan out and which aren't. That would be the biggest and most impactful change in my life. 3. All the other things everybody should do: be better with money, take care of my body, get into therapy, and so on. Story 10. Realize I am way too good for that man and reclaim the next 5 years of my life. Why I thought he was worth it, I will never understand, except to say that low self-esteem is terrible for a person. Story 11. First, payback. I had a list. I was pretty well sized by that point, but just did not have confidence. Assets would be kicked in. Next, invest in Bitcoin. Story 12. Not date and save myself from so much trauma. Stand up for myself and choose a different career path. Story 13. I can think of 3 things off the top of my head. 1. Be kinder to friends and family. 2. Save and invest money instead of wasting it. 3. Learn more about or master my current major before I go to college. High school was not hard, so I would have time to at least briefly review regularly. Story 14. Skip college, work hard, and invest heavily in Bitcoin, then use my money to keep the Venture Brothers on the air indefinitely. Story 15. Prioritize my girlfriend over marijuana and gaming. I took her for granted and still regret it to this day. Story 16. Study more, avoid certain people, and likely spend more time focusing on not having the same ending as I am having right now. Story 17. Tell myself to avoid working in retail auto parts. Instead, join the military and get injured as many documentable times as possible. If worse comes to worst, I retire in 20 years with free insurance. Story 18. I would just live. I feel like all these past 12 years I have been heavily investing in my life, so it is time to live in the moment. Story 19. I reported my supervisor for inappropriate behavior and saved myself from 2 years of calculated isolation, manipulation, grooming, and eventually sexual assault. Story 20. Suffer for 2 years as you relate to none of your fellow 16-year-olds. Then do a large amount of investing. Story 21. Immediately change high schools so I can meet my current boyfriend sooner. Then probably get a better job than a gas station job. Get my license earlier and get my dream car. Take an automotive class and start saving more. Get my mental health in check. I am in a decent place now, but I could be in a better position if I were not so foolish and lazy. I would be disappointed in my younger teen self for being an idiot. Story 22. Drop my grade point average a little bit to take the pressure off. Take a year off between graduation and college to figure out what I really want to do, which will likely be some combination of computers and art. Travel. Go to a community college for the first 2 years and then transfer to an inexpensive university to finish with a minimum of debt. Move out of the United States. Story 23. I do not focus on education and enjoy life more. I stop worrying about what other people think because it does not matter. I let go of religion earlier. Story 24. Reconsider military service. Look at a different degree for college. Take exercise and losing weight seriously. Take the opportunity to confront my abuser from when I was a minor. Talk to my parents about quitting smoking. Get a job instead of being a bitter teenager. Save money to buy a home, then later buy stocks in Amazon, Walmart, Nvidia, Monster Beverage, Apple, Axon, and, of course, Bitcoin. Story 25. Demand intensive therapy and start planning how to move out at 18, probably. Would have avoided a lot of problems. Story 26. Never get married. Enjoy my life without nonsense. Have a lot more money. Pursue my dreams and the lifestyle I want. Story 27. Do not get married. While I adore my children, I would not bring them into this troubled world, but I might consider adopting 1 or 2 older children. Story 28. I was involved with the sisters who I did not know were competing for the chance to be with me at the time. I did not find out until about 15 years later. Story 29. Everything is gone. Depression sets in. You might drive yourself insane trying to decide whether to keep the same path or change it. This is the butterfly effect. Story 30. Tell the aunties about social services. Give Auntie Phyllis the social worker's phone number. Tell her everything. Do not wait, not even for a day. Warn my friend Eric to never listen to music while riding his bike. He will die in a bad accident for this reason in about 8 or 9 months from now if we use today's date. It is not good for anyone. Story 31. I don't know. I might have pushed my parents to let me graduate early. I could have graduated in my junior year, but my school didn't think I was mature enough yet. I would graduate with the people I actually had classes with, start working part-time, skip my 3 failed attempts at college, and start working full-time. Once I turned 18, I would chase my dream of being a Pokemon YouTuber while I was young enough to have free time and the right environment. I would come out to my family while more of them were alive to hear it. If possible, I would convince my grandparents to start preparing my cousin to eventually go to a group home. Story 32. Pay more attention in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics classes. Do not study what I studied. End up at a larger university and commit more fully to a sport. Story 33. Tell his parents he has suicidal thoughts and ideas because it is not for attention. Even if his parents send him away, at least if he is upset, he is alive. Story 34. Figure out how to have both my children without the chaotic situation that came with it. These questions are always a deal breaker for me. I would not do anything that could potentially erase my kids from existence. Yes, I messed up a lot of things and really wish I did not, but I would not risk missing out on Jake and Sam for anything. I love them too much. Story 35. Write a letter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation containing all the details I can remember of the September 11th attacks. Then I will make amazing grades in school because I already know most of it. After that, I will ask out the girl I did not know had a crush on me at the time. I would probably use a little less lysergic acid diethylamide as well. Story 36. I would not have lost my virginity and would have waited a while longer. My life would be drastically different. Story 37. Do not masturbate for the first time. That was the age I learned to masturbate and felt I would never need a woman again. I was wrong. I had been watching pornography from middle school up to that point, suffering blissfully trying to figure out how to get this explosive urge out of my body. I finally tried masturbating at 16 and was too scared to finish because it felt like my penis would explode in a bad way. I finally followed through and experienced my first and best orgasm ever. I literally had rivers of semen going down my shaft. I could never get that again and experienced 9 years of addiction. I am currently 2 months free. At one point, I could not go 3 days. I feel extremely sure this time that I am never going back. The thought does not cross my mind, nor is there an urge strong enough. Story 38. Do a better job of investing. I would study technology as before, but I would also study business with the goal of entering the business side of technology. More importantly, when I was 16, I was shy and easily pushed around. Not now. If I woke up as my 16-year-old self, there would be some social changes for sure. Story 39. I would do what Lois Griffin said and make myself more available. I wondered why I was never asked out on a date and was told I had a presence that telegraphed, "Be gone from me." I was so lonely, bookish, and never had a date. Story 40. Avoid certain people, try harder in school, and get more involved with activities. Do not ignore or miss the hints when girls drop them, and say yes to the girl who asked me to prom. Story 41. Just don't come out to my parents. They were not directly transphobic, but they did their best to stop me from transitioning. Story 42. A surprising number of classmates admitted to me later in life that they had a huge crush on me in high school, but were too scared to say anything. So lots of high school drama would be my answer. Story 43. Get an appointment with an endocrinologist in London so they can diagnose and treat my Kallmann syndrome instead of being incorrectly labeled as a late bloomer in my 20s. Then have a more enjoyable time as a teenager and young adult at university. Story 44. I would hug my grandfather, who would pass away a few years later. Then, I would immediately write a letter to inform the Federal Bureau of Investigation and my congressman about a plot by several men to hijack airliners in a few weeks and cause a terrorist attack in my city. I would ask that they post air marshals on certain cross-country flights. I would then drop off the letters in my local mailbox and hope someone reads them. I would also ask my father to consider investing in Apple. Steve Jobs has some interesting ideas for his company and future products. Story 45. This is a hard one. Obviously, the money and stock stuff would be cool. I could remember things that would help in other places. But the big question is, would I still live my life the same? Would I want to be with my wife again? The child I have now wouldn't exist again. It's practically impossible for the genetics to combine in the exact same way to make the same child, so no matter what, I would have a completely different family. So, rich or not rich, I'm not sure I would make all the same choices again. I like my life now, but there wouldn't be a way to have it exactly the same again. So how much do you change? How much do you try to hold on to? That's hard to know. It's a lot to lose for anyone over the age of 17 or 18. Even if you are only 20, resetting to 16 means resetting a full fifth of your life. Story 46. Stop trying to have friends for the sake of having them and focus on school instead. Do not give my ex the time of day. Fix my sleep schedule. Start my hobbies earlier in life. Choose a different college and study engineering or computer science. Eat better and exercise more. Do not stop reading for fun. Never download TikTok. Advocate for myself instead of becoming a doormat at the slightest difficulty. Get treatment for my medical condition, and while I am at it, take my dad to the doctor so they catch his cancer earlier. I could probably go on. Story 47. Be more confident. There was a time when I should have spoken up for people, but I did not because I was too scared and thought too little of myself to believe my voice mattered. That still haunts me. There was an internship opportunity that came up which I should have taken, but I lacked the confidence in myself to do it. Story 48. I have said it multiple times, but I think I would completely lose it because I cannot imagine going from being married with 2 college degrees, a career, and a condominium back to having algebra homework and a curfew. I would still be a year away from meeting the woman who would become my wife. Story 49. I actually kept my job working under the table at a clinic and saved that money to invest later. I wouldn't be able to invest immediately because I had no way to have a bank account or even my own computer at that point. My whole family lived in poverty, so I just stashed as much as I could. Story 50. I am very annoyed because I would have to restart 11th grade and college all over again, even though I am 1.5 years away from finishing. However, I would have better grades this time around. I would probably start studying some subjects earlier and exercise more during that half of the pandemic. Story 51. Take it easy, study more, join sports properly, and learn about investing. The take it easy part makes sense because my head was rushing at 1,000 miles per hour due to my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and teenage hormones. Story 52. I came out much sooner. I also started investing in Bitcoin and tried to prevent or mitigate some of the major disasters of the past 14 years. Story 53. All? No need for schooling, college, masters, and all that. I know it already. Stocks, Powerball, gambling on sports, buy all the oil-producing land in Texas and Venezuela. Tell the British not to send Khomeini home to Iran. Give Castro an American passport and a high-paying job on the condition he never goes to Cuba. Convert Osama bin Laden to pacifism. Story 54. Everything. I would change many things, such as taking school more seriously with the knowledge I have now and stopping chasing boys. I would focus on myself and my future. Story 55. 1. I would save as much money as I can, then wait for Bitcoin to drop and invest all the money. Then I would split the profits with my family. 2. I would focus on myself more. 3. I would forget about my friends because they all betrayed me. 4. I will never date an American woman again. Story 56. 1. Glow up means to improve your appearance and confidence. I was unattractive in high school. 2. Act up means to be more rebellious and destructive. People around me when I was growing up were usually malicious towards me, even if it seemed passive. I was timid back then. I would have done anything to be more assertive. 3. Show up means to actually be there for the ones who needed me the most. I usually was not present back then. Story 57. Too late for Bitcoin, not too late for quickly profiting from other cryptocurrencies. Also, I ended my relationship with the girl I was with at the time. I went too long without learning the things I actually wanted to learn, so it's good that I already knew all that. Yes, it would be smooth sailing from that point. Story 58. No volunteering. More focus on health. Prioritize leaving my family and going no contact. Find a job that will leave me energy to pursue my dream. Stay away from family and other toxic people. Prepare for the coming of totalitarianism in my country and position myself to resist. Story 59. Never pick up a cigarette or drink alcohol. Learn to code immediately instead of waiting until I was sober at 28. Buy Bitcoin, memorize the numbers and date of the next huge Powerball lottery, and just bide my time to live a slightly better life. And sing more. I love a good sing. Story 60. Try to warn Albert Gore about hanging Chads in Florida. Getting an accurate count in the year 2000 would almost be as impactful as killing baby Hitler. Story 61. Buy Bitcoin at $1, start my transition just out of high school instead of in my 30s. Write a best-selling near-future dystopian young adult novel based on our current worst timeline with the Bitcoin money. Stop that kid from falling into Harambe's enclosure and getting him shot. Then sell the rest of my Bitcoin at $20,000 each. Story 62. 16? Cool. Okay. I lost my virginity when I had to. I wrote in one of my books the story of a movie I watched because I feel that in another universe, that movie was based on a book. I tried to spend more time with a special girl I had in my life. We were not romantically involved, but being away from her during the pandemic ruined my life. Story 63. Know that I am still not young enough to undo the damage that broke me. Life continues as it did, for I know that is one way to stay alive and end up relatively successful. Story 64. Not be forced or coerced into taking up smoking. Be more assertive. Do not worry too much about things that are probably overblown in my mind. Do better at trying to get a job and save money. Story 65. Different career path, probably would not get a degree. Plan to enter trades as a heavy-duty mechanic or equipment technician, complete an apprenticeship, and move to Canada or the United States. Story 66. 1. Buy as much Apple, Nvidia, and Bitcoin as a McDonald's paycheck can support. 2. Work hard during junior and senior years, then get into a top computer science program. 3. Try as hard as possible to get a job with equity at a top technology company. If unavailable, go to Wall Street. 4. Retire at 30. Story 67. Stop spending time with the people I did. They did not like me and I struggled socially, so I tried my best to fit in. Story 68. When I was 16, I had friends buying lysergic acid diethylamide and cannabis concentrates with Bitcoin. I would stock up on Bitcoin and sell it 10 years later. Story 69. When I was 16 years old, I fully committed to being confident. That didn't mean I was sure of myself, but I decided not to worry about myself. I used to be self-conscious and question everything. At that age, I chose to be fully confident at all times and admit when I was wrong until I knew what I was talking about. It may sound mature, but in reality, it involved a lot of saying, yeah, I don't know. What I would do differently is simply no. It wouldn't make me more friends, but I would make decisions with much less uncertainty and without the need to fake it until I made it, like I did back then. Story 70. Take guitar more seriously. Learn the important things my dad said I needed to learn. Play the songs other people actually wanted to hear. And throw a few punches. There were a few bullies in school who liked calling me names and all kinds of other stuff. A suspension would have been worth it. Story 71. Buy tickets to the Split Enz show on New Year's Eve 1999. Do not move to the United States of America. Go anywhere else. Go to Australia, you will love Australia. And talk, do not become selectively mute, or they will want to administer electroconvulsive therapy and put you in the psychiatric ward. Story 72. Drop out of high school and start building a home in the middle of a remote national forest. Learn from local libraries and surrounding communities' available resources, and meet a friendly person to share experiences with. The end. Story 73. Bitcoin, just a whole lot of Bitcoin. Finish all my laboratory technician paperwork. Knowing this, I also understand this is the moment when my health starts to become more complicated, so even more Bitcoin. At 18, I have surgery scheduled, which, combined with the stress of college admission and everything else, would absolutely reduce my quality of life, and I would need the money to hire a lawyer, sign a do not resuscitate order, and fight hard to ensure that surgery does not happen and also to avoid applying to college, which means not moving away from home. With the laboratory technician paperwork, my current knowledge, and the remaining Bitcoin funds, I could start a makerspace with wet lab capabilities here in Mexico City and essentially live my dream for a few years until my health improves. Also, spend more time with my grandmother before the pandemic. And use my newfound freedom to try to meet my online best friend in real life. Story 74. Besides the money, work out more. Get intimate more. Additionally, switch to nano-hydroxyapatite toothpaste earlier along with TheraCare to save my teeth. Story 75. Investing money and changing how I react to an accident I was in. I still allow it to happen but take a different approach with the money I receive from it. Story 76. Everything. Spend more time with my stepfather. Try to save him, maybe. Skip the abusive relationships. Set myself up for success much earlier. Do not be such a stellar employee that I miss out on the only family I can stand. Story 77. I have an incurable illness, and even if I could go back in time, I still would not be able to cure it. I will just have to endure it all over again. Story 78. I have 10 years to get myself into a position where I can make sure that Palm Beach, Florida, does not use the butterfly ballot for the 2000 election. Story 79. Put effort into the girl who liked me, was cool, and was attractive instead of wasting time on girls who were very attractive but not cool and not interested. Spend more time with my mother. Try harder in school. Invest that $500 in Bitcoin instead of marketing my investment broker, which was a waste of time. I would probably have a very different life. It is pretty good right now, so maybe just spending more time with my mom is the best choice. Story 80. Mess everything up. I want to meet and marry my wife, but knowing what is to come, I could not manage it. Plus, the way I handled my depression in college really screwed up my life for a while. I do not want to go through that again, but it is a necessary component for my desired outcome. Could I just marry someone else? Sure. Plus, I could actually have some success in the high school dating scene with my current confidence. But I love my wife, so I would not redo it. Now, if we are talking about restarting like 10 years ago, it is a different story, if only because of investments. There is still a lot I do not want to relive, but as long as I have my wife, I am good. Story 81. Do not imitate a child with oppositional defiant disorder to gain attention and have my needs met because I saw it got him attention and achieved his way. Story 82. Assuming this is time travel shenanigans and paradox immunity, do everything I can to get my grandfather to quit smoking, get checked for cancer, and spend as much time as possible with him. Also, do not pay the security deposit for my ex-grandmother's apartment that she abandoned. This would essentially be hitting the reset button on my entire internet history, and I am running through my head things like avoiding multiple predators I was targeted by, a severely abusive relationship I was in, and toxic friends who betrayed me. But what would be the point? It already happened, and I have already sustained the damage. Avoiding it a second time would be nice, but I went through an absurdly specific chain of events that got me to where I am today. It would be hell to try to replicate and impossible to do while dodging all those obstacles. Would the rest of the world play out the same way? Would, for example, my boyfriend be aware of the time regression? I could use it to save him a lot of pain if he were, but I do not think I would be able to get him away from the people who caused his pain without the events happening. Story 83. I study harder at school because I find reading books or anything else more interesting now than I ever did at 16. Story 84. First and most importantly, I would get laid like a lot. All those times a girl hit on me and I didn't get it. Not again. All those mistakes I made, not again. I'll make new ones. That relationship I took for granted, not anymore. Then I would get into Bitcoin early. More importantly, I would start investing early in an index fund. So when I was 30, I would be able to buy a house without any struggle. Story 85. As a 16-year-old myself, if I am waking up today, I will just go about my day. If I am restarting, I will try a bit harder to get my driver's license. Story 86. Force my parents to get me evaluated and medicated for my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Then, when they can see tangible evidence that it helped because my grades improved, convince them I also need therapy. Thinking about getting diagnosed, treated, and into therapy at 16 makes my brain frazzle out at how open the possibilities are. Story 87. Invest more in myself by exercising regularly and spending less time being idle. I will probably start going out more to prevent becoming the introvert that I am today. Story 88. It was 1992 when I was 16. I had a few years left in higher education, and then I would start earning money. Amazon, Google, Apple, Netflix, Nvidia, and eventually Bitcoin and property. Story 89. Do not marry her. Make every investment your parents told you not to, but you knew was right. Do not wait to graduate high school. Children are worth every penny in the end. You should have had them sooner with someone who would have loved them. Story 90. Stop seeking attention from men who could not care less about me. Stop caring what my classmates think because in a few years I will barely remember them. Be much nicer to my mother and have more compassion for my father. Get off that phone. Oh, and that boy, he is the one. Do not take that for granted. Story 91. UHG 1980 was a terrible year for me. I did what I could then, trying to survive and find ways to keep my brothers fed. Story 92. Edit. I misread the prompt and thought it was that I could talk to my younger self. I am going to stick with that. The intent is clear. That new girlfriend you have is the one. On June 26, 2017, she will want to go on a road trip to Michigan with her father. If you let her go, she will be killed, and you will be completely and utterly destroyed. There will be no justice. You will not recover. You will never be happy again after that. Do not let her go. Story 93. Invest in cryptocurrency. Start seeing a real therapist instead of a nonsensical pendulum reader, and consider going to the gym. The goal is not to start early and become a monster, but to genuinely feel better in my own body. Otherwise, not much changes. Story 94. Dogecoin. Here I come. No, but for real, I used to love imagining these scenarios, but now I have a life I love so much, I would never recover if I lost it. Even if I went and found my fiancé again, it would not be the same person. That is not my fiancé. It is another version of him. I do not really think I could survive the loss, but let's say I could. I would probably become a billionaire through key historic investments in cryptocurrency, and then spend the rest of my lonely life being a philanthropist, maybe traveling the world, and setting up trust funds for the people I never met in this timeline but once loved. Story 95. Bitcoin. Get my high school English teacher fired by reporting her to the State Department of Education. Do not under any circumstances break up with my first adult relationship after high school. The slight and temporary issues we were having were not worth breaking up a perfect relationship. Stay with her, marry her, and have children with her. Story 96. It's a very long list, but for starters, I will tell the truth to the psychiatrist I saw around that time. That alone would probably change the whole trajectory of the rest of my life. Story 97. All the money for one, but also prepare myself mentally for all the mistakes I remember making and ensure they do not happen again. This includes, but is not limited to, relationship enders, outbursts, embarrassing moments, emotional weakness, mostly anger, and saying goodbye to many people who pass away too soon, and preventing this if possible. Story 98. Agreed. I shudder to think of being a teenager in today's world. When I was a teenager, you could successfully get away with stuff. Story 99. So hard. I have many regrets, but maybe if you change those things, I am not who I am today, and I kind of like who I am and who I am trying to become. Maybe if I changed things, I would be different and maybe not someone I would like. Story 100. I am investing in the usual Nvidia, Tesla, and Netflix trio and setting a reminder for August 2020 to buy a good amount of Shiba Inu and sell in October 2021 after becoming a billionaire. Story 1011. Start working out and dieting immediately. 2. Focus on school performance and aim to earn a degree early. 3. Try to obtain a technical role in the military instead of a low-level position. 4. Pursue a career in a corporate company or at least an established startup instead of starting my own business. 5. Aim for a research position or consider relocation. Story 102. We would likely not be able to recall every specific fact that could be useful, probably not much at all. I do not think we would remember the junior and senior knowledge needed in high school for exams and tests either, so we would be at risk of poor education. This would be challenging. The best thing we could do is invest time and quickly write down everything we remember that we liked about our lives and the people we cared about so that we could reconnect somehow. We would probably be very bored, though, as we have played those games and seen those shows and movies. Story 103. I would just skate more, but be a bit wiser about it so I don't break my body doing it this time. No risky activities like stairs and handrails. Story 104. Go out with the other girl. Kayla is going to cheat off your theory test and get the scholarship, so cover your answers. Story 105. Immediately quit World of Warcraft and save money to invest in Bitcoin and Nvidia. Then focus more on my studies than I did last time. Story 106. I once bought a pizza with 20 Bitcoins. Today, that is a $20 million pizza. I would not do that. I would also not date or marry anyone with borderline personality disorder. Story 107. On the one hand, I want to be selfish, tell myself to invest, actually take college seriously, never use heroin, and live the life I wish I were living now. But that would mean my daughter would never be born. On the other hand, that would mean living the life I lived all over again. I do not know. Story 108. I tried to convince my mother to stop abusing her pain medication. I did not date any of the amazing girls I knew in high school because I was never right for any of them. I miss all my good friends from high school whom I drove away with my selfish behavior. I would not join the army again. That is for sure. Story 109. Different college. Different spouse and marrying much later. Eventually, when I did get married, I would have 3 to 4 children. Story 110. Probably not a lot. I did not know what I was doing then, and I do not know what I am doing now. I would add art to my study load in years 11 and 12 though. I needed a stress relief subject. Story 111. First, I would absolutely freak out at the fact that there would be almost no way to genuinely recreate my son. At best, there could only be a similar genetic version of him. After the horror of that faded, I would invest in things like Bitcoin and various other assets and try a new game plus on easy. Story 112. On my 18th birthday, I received $40,000 from my mother's life insurance policy. Growing up extremely poor and with no sense of financial responsibility, I spent it all in less than 2 years. I would definitely manage that much better a second time. Story 113. I would crack up. There is no way I could handle being 16 in 1992, knowing everything I know now, from losing parents, having children, and realizing there is no way I would date their mother today. Friends who have come and gone, along with current events. Story 114. Be confused about how I time traveled into the future and try to check what I have missed. Then, I would proceed to be upset about the current state of the world since there is no chance world politics have changed even a little in the year I missed. Story 115. Start investing. At the time, I did not have internet access, so I invested in 3 to 5 year government bonds for the long term and bank deposits for the short term of a few months. Story 116. Worry considerably less about things. I learned to let go at an older age. Definitely take less nonsense from people and more confidently stand up to those who deserve it. Do not waste time on college, but go directly into a field I learned to enjoy, maybe take a few courses in that area. This time, actually invest part of my savings in Apple stocks. I wanted to do this around 2004, about $5,000, but I could not morally do so as I was living with my parents rent-free. I could not justify it to myself. Invest in some other areas as well. Honestly, knowing what I know now, I do not know how I would handle the women in my life. I genuinely loved a few of them. One ruined her life with addictions a few years after we broke up. Another passed away a year after the engagement ended due to a genetic disease she did not know about. That second one always gives me pause with questions like these. Story 117. Ignoring the obvious advice to invest in things with my future knowledge and become extremely wealthy. If I woke up at 16, I would be preparing to go to college the next year. I would tell myself that I need to attend all of my freshman year college classes and put in the necessary effort. I would know that failing out of college my freshman year would lead to a decade of struggling to find good work, significant struggles with accepting myself and my failure, which led to serious issues with self-confidence, self-esteem, and insecurities. I worked really hard to eventually graduate from a different school, get a job I am satisfied with, and am generally content. However, I know I threw away a lot of money and lost many potential opportunities by not taking my freshman year seriously. 20 years later, I know I will never shake the feeling of what could have been that I carry with me. Story 118. Go on a date with the popular girl in my class because she was flirting with me and I missed her advances. Story 119. When I was 16 in 1983, just having adult sensibilities and an adult's understanding of who I am and what life is about instead of the chaos I was living in at that time would have absolutely changed my life for the better. From 16 to 40 was extremely rough. Story 120. Take my dog to the veterinarian to check for cancer because he died from it 13 months after my 16th birthday. A lower priority would be to prevent an injury that kept me out of football for a year and start getting back in shape sooner. Also, preparing more for the American college testing exam. I scored higher than the national average, but still. Story 121. I would start flossing right away. I would ask out more girls. I might try going to dances. I would appreciate my parents much more than I did back then. I would give them some investment advice so they could make significant money. I would try to avoid some early career mistakes I made when I graduated from college. Story 122. Recognize when someone is interested in me. Exercise and eat better. Invest in technology stocks. Story 123. Nothing. The mere thought of changing anything, and thus not becoming the father of my child, makes me anxious. Story 124. Invest, keep doing sports, and take the shots I missed because I was too scared and too unaware to notice. Story 125. I would do everything differently, not because I am dissatisfied with my life, but to see what the difference would be. Story 126. There are many people I would treat better than a 16-year-old boy treated them. Nothing horrible, just being less selfish and more understanding. Also, learn to play a few instruments. Story 127. Everyone in the thread is talking about how they would get rich, but honestly, I think I would just be really uncomfortable. I would be a middle-aged man psychologically, but stuck in a teenage body, forced to hang out with 16-year-olds in high school every day. Trying to hang out with people more like me would also be weird because what 45-year-old talks with a 16-year-old? I would also miss my kids, my wife, and all the friends I met along the way. I think it would be pretty lonely. I would like this question a lot more if I suddenly woke up as my 25-year-old self. Do not even get me started on all the first experiences, such as first kiss and sex. That would now just be extremely creepy. Story 128. I would take every single decision again that brought me to Ireland in 2020, where I met my current girlfriend. I would go through my teenage years all over again just to meet her for the first time. Story 129. I'm surprised how few comments are about hooking up with members of your preferred sex who didn't give you any attention before. But maybe that's just me. I was so shy and traumatized in high school and college that I didn't have sex or really explore relationships with anybody at all. It wasn't until much later in life that I developed any confidence and was able to have fun with sex and relationships. When I think back on how that would go if I were magically transported into my 16-year-old body, it's not even that I would make it a priority. It would just happen. Knowing what I know now about having fun and helping women feel comfortable around me, I feel like the rumor mill would have done all the work for me. Story 130. Man, this would be such a game changer. I would probably start building the systems I use now way earlier instead of spending years thinking I was just broken or unmotivated. At 16, I was constantly beating myself up for not being able to focus or follow through on anything. I would start projects and abandon them, miss deadlines, and procrastinate on everything important. Everyone around me, including myself, thought it was a character flaw. If I could go back knowing what I know now about executive dysfunction, I would immediately start with the basics, time-boxing everything instead of relying on motivation, creating environmental structure, and building small accountability systems that actually work with an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder brain instead of against it. The crazy part is how much earlier I could have started feeling proud of myself instead of ashamed. It took me until my late 20s to realize that my brain just works differently and needs different supports. I ended up building Scattermind specifically because of this realization that most of us spend way too many years thinking we are lazy when we are actually just using the wrong systems for our brains. 16-year-old me would probably be skeptical at first, but imagine having those extra 10+ years of actually working with your brain instead of fighting it constantly. Story 131. Manipulation. Lots of manipulation. I want to see just how much I can alter the course of society by doing certain things at the right time. Story 132. Bitcoin and stocks that will increase in value later. Do not give up in a few years. Somehow navigate that forum again to meet the love of my life, which will probably be the hardest because I do not remember anything from that portal. Be better to her and my family. Get a good job until investments grow high enough to allow us to retire and have some savings for children. Story 133. It's always the same answer, Bitcoin. Invest everything you have in Bitcoin and live in the streets until 2012. Story 134. I would change everything. Literally at 16, with today's maturity, I would study hard to have the profession I always wanted. I would encourage my mother to prioritize education. I would not care so much about others. I would save money to leave home. I would not get married or have children. Story 135. I might be pretty upset. I am doing all right these days. I am not rich, but when I was 16, I was not in a good place. Story 136. God. Spend time with my girlfriend. Smoke weed. Chill with my dog and my dad again. Both are deceased. Then just be normal. Get a job, keep it, get married, have a child, and be a good person this time. Story 137. Open a bank account. Buy a certificate of deposit and pay into it weekly. Continue until you are ready to buy a house. A high-yield savings account is good if you do not withdraw from it. Story 138. End it all. Making it this far would be a waste to let it all go. But back then, it would not have mattered. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.